Welcome everyone to the Poverty Reduction Policy Development Committee. I have had apologies from Andrew Davis and Kelly Roberts.
And there's also Erica Kirshner and David Phillips.
Thanks. Okay.
And can I give apologies for Amy Hawkins?
I don't think Amy needs to send her apologies. I think she's the sort of person that it's nice to see when she can come. She's not actually legally an attendee, so that's fine. But thank you.
She still apologises for not being able to be here.
Fair enough.
Mary, I should have to leave at 4:45 if we're still going then. Sorry.
Right, okay. Well, what I'm aiming for today is a very quick verbal update of formal business, and then we can go straight into a working group meeting. So I'll try and get through the formal business quickly, Peter, so that we can have a discussion in working group before you have to go. So the agenda is such that I have to first take declarations of interest. Are there any? And the minutes of the previous meeting. Has anyone had a chance to look at these and confirm whether they're correct?
Yeah, they're okay.
Thank you. Okay, Christine moving, Peter's nodding, Peter second. Thank you. Right, okay, and that brings us on to updates. So as I say, these are just verbal updates, opportunities for people to ask questions. Just verbal, and then we'll go through to a working group meeting afterwards to perhaps discuss ongoing work in more detail, if that's okay. So the first thing is garden sharing. So this was our substantive item at the last meeting. We had presentations from Room to Grow and Lend and Tend. Now, I have been looking around and asking for any other organisations which facilitate garden sharing in such a way that the council could effectively signpost people to those other organisations, rather than have the burden of setting up the infrastructure to do that and look after it ourselves. And Lend and Tend is the only organisation that I have heard of. I have heard of conversations happening in other local authorities where similar discussions are being had about whether garden sharing should be promoted and how it could be facilitated. But actually, I think there's really value in just having one organisation that does that and having everybody go through that one organisation. So I would like to recommend that we come up with a way of supporting both these organisations and recommending that people in Swansea join up to them. And that's not in such a way that the council then has any liability for what they do. They're separate from the council. They're not run by the council, but they're useful organisations which people independently can access and make their own arrangements with in order to facilitate garden sharing. So if this committee is in agreement, what I'll suggest is that the working group comes up with some more specific recommendations that we would put forward to the cabinet member about how the council might take that forward. Ryland.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just going to say that since the last meeting, I've sort of floated the idea in a variety of places in Llansamnant, and I think there's genuine interest in this type of scheme. I think there's undoubted demand for a scheme like this. It's only a question of how you actually link people, both people who would like to have their garden done by such a scheme through offering their land, for want of a better way of wording it, and people who would be happy to give up their time to do somebody's garden. I think it's only the mechanism of how do you link people together that's missing. I think we should be supporting these groups.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. And I think that the one thing that I could see might be a barrier would be the registration fee at Lend and Tend. Now, although Joyce made it clear that that is a donation, it's a recommended donation on joining, I do know that Lend and Tend does rely on those donations to cover their costs and keep going. And where donations are low, they have to seek external funding. So I think the discussion that we need to have with the cabinet member will perhaps centre on how can we help local people access Lend and Tend, and how can we help Lend and Tend support local people? So if the committee is happy that that's the next thing that we'll do, then we can take that forward. And I'd like to do that as soon as possible, because we are in the growing season right now, and this would be the time to kind of get it started. Although, because of COVID, you know, we can't really be promoting garden sharing at the moment anyway. But it would be good to get the ball rolling, wouldn't it? So should we take that forward? We'll have a working group discussion about what the details of that would be and how we would recommend that to the cabinet member, and then we'll be away, won't we? Okay, thanks. So community food growing. Joe drafted a policy which we discussed at a working group meeting back in January, and we made some further recommendations for amendments to that policy. Nothing further has happened with that at the moment. Joe is going to work those further recommendations up into the draft, and then it's going to go to the cabinet member and the officer working group on community food growing for further discussion. So I will keep you all updated via the working group on progress with that, but there isn't anything further to report just at this moment. Okay. The campaign to increase benefit take-up. We had a really great presentation last month, didn't we, from Jane Storer, who told us all about the pension credit take-up campaign. Now, the reports that we're having from officers are that the numbers are really low. So we're trying to get the message out there, get the free phone number out there, and actually the helpline just isn't getting the volume of calls that we would hope. So I would suggest that the working group could have a discussion about how we can address this, how we as a committee can make recommendations or share ideas for how to get more people coming through the pension credit take-up campaign. We also heard from Jane about Dangos Cymru. So it's important to acknowledge, I think, that since we put this item on our work plan of, you know, benefit take-up, Welsh Government has also started working on exactly that thing. So that's encouraging, isn't it? So Dangos Cymru is offering online training sessions for anybody who might be helped to identify if someone's underclaiming, or support them to go and investigate whether they're entitled to benefits. And that could be anyone in the community, a volunteer, as well as like a frontline member of staff for an organisation such as the council. And they've been massively oversubscribed, the training sessions, but I think they've got some more capacity. And from the middle of April, the sessions are available to be booked on Eventbrite. So I think we just need to think about how we promote those. And then in the working group to have a further discussion about what more we would like to do on benefit take-up, given, you know, the context of what's already underway. So nothing else to update on that at the moment. Officers, do jump in, Tony, Joe, if you want to add anything or stop me at any point. Fairness in green health. So the last update on this was that basically it was with Martin Nichols, that we as a political working group have set out the what we should do and the why we should do it, and it's over to the officers to flesh out the how. So the last update that I had from Martin was that some funding was being identified, which would enable the council to pre-purchase trees and have them growing in a nursery ready to be planted out with communities at an appropriate time. And there is a suggestion that green fairness be taken into account with that, and deprived neighbourhoods be targeted for that tree planting work. So that is something that's already being discussed, even though the policy itself hasn't actually been ratified yet. So this is similar as the update I gave last time, really. The policy is starting to make itself known and felt, even though it hasn't been ratified yet, and officers are starting to think in that way of green health, fairness in green health, which is really good. But I don't have an update yet on the actual machinery of moving it forward to ratification. Martin still needs to discuss it with the relevant cabinet members. Okay. Next, excuse me. is the promoting affordable credit policy, and I know that Anthony has an update for us, so I'll hand over to him.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, just to update that following approval of the draft promoting affordable credit policy by CMT, there were some minor amendments to make to the policy document, which focused on the governance arrangements. Those amendments have now been made. The policy document has been translated into Welsh, and I'm liaising currently with the consultation coordinator, who's also taken the feedback that came from this group on the consultation questions. So whilst I can't say right now when the consultation will go live, I'm expecting it to go out to public consultation in the very near future. And of course, I will be helping promote that consultation through our various networks to ensure that our key partner organisations are aware of the policy and can comment on it and make sure that our thinking is correct and that we can move forward.
Fab, thanks, Tony. So we're just waiting for further news. Of course, Tony will let us know when the consultation goes live and we can all help promote it, can't we? Okay, the corporate debt policy hasn't had anything done with it. We've definitely left that one on the back burner while we focused on growing, because we wanted to be ready in the spring with some concrete policies on that. So I think once we've written to the cabinet member with our final recommendations on garden sharing, and the community growing policy has also been moved forward to the officer working group, we'll be free then to focus again on corporate debt. And I did ask previously for volunteers to offer themselves up for a specific working group on this subject. But I think people's circumstances might have changed. So I'll put the call out again and we'll have a specific meeting on this topic in the not too distant future. Okay. Okay. So the next item, implementation of the socioeconomic duty. Now, I've mentioned this before. This is a duty that's part of the Equality Act Wales, which the Welsh Government is enacting as of the 31st of this month, which places the duty on public bodies to take account in their strategic decision making of any opportunity to address inequalities of outcome related to socioeconomic disadvantage. There's a lot of discussion going on about this rollout, and particularly the Equality and Human Rights Commission Wales has been producing some helpful resources. They've recently published an evaluation report. So it seems funny that they're evaluating something that we haven't even done yet, but they've got a lot to say actually about the preparation and the guidance and whether public bodies that they've interviewed feel that they are ready and the approach that they're planning to take. So following this meeting, I will circulate a link to that report for anybody who's interested. I think it's useful reading to see that everybody has the same kind of struggles and concerns, and also positive feelings about the duty, that it has good potential to really make a difference if it's applied in the right way. Locally, I know that officers are working on an integrated impact assessment, which will need to be piloted as our way of kind of beginning to work with the duty. And there's going to be also an EHRC call for people who participated in the research for the evaluation report that I've just mentioned. So I'm attending that along with our Deputy Chief Exec, and we might bring back from that, some more practical pointers about how everybody's doing with implementation and what we might want to consider doing with implementation locally. So I think what we should do is timetable a presentation by our Equalities Officer, Catherine Window, to talk in more detail about the duty itself, which I can do. I've done it to death, but it's not really appropriate for me as chair. I'll hand that one over to Catherine. And also she can update us on the practicalities of where we're at locally with actually preparing for rollout. Okay. So item 11 is the work plan. The work plan, we decided as a committee to keep our work plan fairly fluid and to just have a list of topics that we were aiming to work through in due course and make some constructive progress on. And I think that that quite open and flexible approach has served us quite well so far. The topics that we haven't already mentioned in our updates are poverty-proofing emerging policies. So that is something that we need to discuss, and I would suggest that we do that in the context of the socioeconomic duty, actually. So perhaps when we have that session with Catherine to look in more detail at the duty, we will talk about our desire to use the duty for poverty-proofing emerging policies and programmes, as in our work programme. Also, public transport is something that I know everyone on this committee was really keen that we make some progress on. So what I can say is that we're not the only PDC with an interest in this. And at the last meeting of the Recovery and Future Generations PDC, which I sit on as a member, and also Cyril Anderson sits on that committee, but he is also chair of the Economy and Infrastructure PDC. And we agreed that all three of these PDCs, the Recovery and Future Generations, Poverty Reduction, and Economy and Infrastructure, are all interested in transport and a discussion about transport, perhaps with slightly different focuses. So there is some overlap between our concern for people on low incomes and what a barrier transport is for people on low incomes when they're trying to access opportunities, and the Recovery and Future Generations PDC also having a similar concern about equality and equal access to transport and opportunities. So it was agreed that Mandy Evans, who chairs the Recovery and Future Generations PDC, would look to arrange perhaps some sort of meeting, initial discussion, workshop session between all three PDCs to look at transport, and I'm awaiting further information about that. So that's the update for that. Okay, so that's it for the agenda, unless anyone wants to raise anything before we wrap up. No. Right, okay. Well, that was definitely a short and sweet PDC meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll stop recording now then.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Right.